Hello and welcome to Creating Canon with your hosts AJ Hamilton and nonsensical Palpatine.
Why, thank you. Yep. In case you haven't guessed or didn't read the episode title, we are doing
Star Wars
Episode 9, Rise of the Skywalker.
That's right. Oh my goodness.
That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm proud of you. Yeah. And Nicholas C. Pappas.
On the cannon blast!
I guess. If we sound a little different right now, we are actually recording this remotely. Nick and I are, for the first time in a recording session, in different parts of the state. So I'm in Northern California, you're in Southern California.
And I'm not in like a really nice little studio setup that you have.
Right.
I am literally in my office recording on the mic in my laptop. So please bear with us.
It's all good. It's gonna sound great.
It'll work. It'll cut together.
Indeed.
Oh boy. All right. So where do we start, AJ? Where we always start with Cannon Blast.
Indeed we do.
Just to remind you all, we have not spoken about how we feel about Star Wars.
That's right.
At all. But I do think it might be interesting if we talk about our history with Star Wars. Like,
okay.
Would you call yourself a Star Wars fan?
Yes, I would. I remember seeing the original trilogy, the OT, at a very young age, on VHS. I saw Han shoot first, can you believe it? I was very excited. I was young-ish, not too young for the prequels, and that kind of killed my buzz. But I really enjoyed the original 4, 5, and 6. And I had a lot of the toys. I had a lot of the prequel toys. I don't know why. But it holds a place in my heart, definitely. I've never been the one to read out into the expanded universe so much, which a lot of it isn't canon anymore. Hey!
Right. Hey-o.
But I was fans of Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie. So that was my history of it.
What's your favorite Star Wars movie?
Huh.
Or, you can do two.
Yeah, no. I think it would go... it feels so trite and expected, but I would say Empire Strikes Back is probably my favorite. And then A New Hope. But I would say out of the prequels, I would say Revenge of the Sith would be the better one. And should we do the current... No, we can't do the current one because...
So
what about you?
So I have an interesting, history with Star Wars in that I saw all the movies when I was 5, and then I hadn't seen them again until the prequels came out. Actually, I take that back. When the prequels came out, I had rewatched A New Hope, and I found it extremely boring.
I watched the re-releases. In theater,
Well, that's what I went and did.
Gotcha.
I saw A New Hope, the re-release in theaters, and I did not see the other two. And I think I had watched all of the prequels before I really went back and watched the original trilogy again.
Gotcha.
So I came from a real interesting place where I had seen them, but I remembered nothing, and I just remember loving the Ewoks, but
of course,
not because I was 5 when I saw it. Those were cool.
It was made
I can't
exactly
remember
for you, just like the Porgs.
Exactly. So I don't have any nostalgia wrapped up in Star Wars. Star Wars to me is not a nostalgic thing.
Okay.
So I would not call myself a big fan. And I also think that my favorite 2 Star Wars movies, and remember, this is non-nostalgia at all, are actually Rogue One and The Last Jedi. I thought Rian Johnson did some awesome stuff. So when we talk about it, know that that's where I'm coming from.
I completely forgot about Rogue One, and that doesn't say much for it. But I, out of all of the ones that have come out in the past, decade? Whatever.
5 years.
5 years. Jesus. 5 or 6 years. I did like that one the best, I would say. It felt self-contained. You know, because the other stuff, it's very difficult to fit so much story and so much lore and pay tribute and try to tell something new and do something original within this universe, because you've got so much stuff to contend with.
Yeah, well, there's so much history, and like when you really think about Rogue One, it was a prequel, and it did have its own sequel, which was A New Hope. It was just perfectly set up in there.
It was, except it wasn't really locked in so hard with the characters and the history. It just had to fit into a place, but it could tell completely different stories about different people.
Well, and I thought that's something that I really loved about it, was I thought it was incredibly brave that, I mean, at this point, we'll spoiler away on Rogue One, of like, that you kill off your entire
cast.
Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that. And I loved it so much. It felt like the end of what I love so much about the end of Infinity War.
Yeah.
But they stuck with it.
Right, yeah.
Whereas Infinity War sort of reverse engineered all of that.
There was no pulling back from that.
Yeah.
I also got to say, Alan Tudyk as K2SO was probably one of my favorite droids, if not my favorite droid in general. Yeah, so... So there's our review of Rogue One.
There's our history.
The end.
Done. See you later. Oh no, wait. We're here to talk about Rise of Skywalker.
Right. Okay, gotcha. Right. Yes.
So again, we have not spoken about this off air. We are going to find out each other's true reactions.
Yes.
And as we do all the time, we're going to rock paper scissors for it. Ready?
All right.
All right. I had scissors.
Okay.
Paper.
He covered me with paper.
I covered you with signs.
So, Nick, you have the choice of going first or going second. What would you like?
This one's really hard. I think I am going to let usually I go, like, whoever. I'm going to let you go first.
You son of a bitch.
Do you want me to go first?
No, no, it's your choice. I get to go first. All right. This one
was
tough. No, it wasn't a Cats movie. So that's good, I suppose. But so I went and got to see this 3-4 days early because I had a friend who was in the press who got...
we get it. You have a friend, AJ. Jesus.
Listen, I just have to keep something myself. Anyway, I have a friend in the press, and I got to see it on Tuesday. And I was so excited. I was surrounded by, of course, critical people because they're in the press. They're all going to have critical things to say, obviously.
I mean, that's what they're literally paid for.
That's what I've heard. So I think I still felt the fanboyishness, people still wanted to enjoy it. And I could feel every time when something didn't hit the crowd right. It wasn't like people were laughing directly at it, which I've heard audiences of Cats are doing, where they're just like, this is ridiculous. I can't believe this has even been made on screen. But
side note, I cannot wait to see Cats.
I can.
In fact,
I can.
I am actually actively talking my family into seeing Cats on Christmas Day.
That's insane. But
that is where I'm at with that movie.
Go with Santa on that. My God. But so it wasn't like derisive. It wasn't boo and hiss. But I could consistently feel like a collective frustrated head shake whenever something was a bit too fan servicey and was too much of a platitude, because there were plenty of those. And also, whenever something just came out of left field, I will say the first 15 minutes of this is a huge retcon. It's like they did a U-turn in a drive-through. I mean, it just kind of was too much and yet too little at the same time. I think in Return of the Jedi, it felt like a conclusion as well. It felt like all of these stories had been told. Everyone that we had been following along got a resolution, and sort of it was, we were sending them off, they were riding away in the sunset. And yet, in this, we get one real resolution, and it just the ending of yet another Star Wars. It didn't feel like it wrapped up in any way. I know that there was a lot of imagery that wrapped it up. I know that there was celebration and all that stuff, but this movie didn't feel like the grand ending to 9 movies to me. And I don't know if it could have been done better, but one thing, and we can discuss this obviously, but if I let you, I think that there is a big problem when it's not one person's vision, especially for a trilogy arc. And I think that's a huge problem there, because there's pushing, there's pulling, there's a lot of influences that won't agree with everyone's sensibilities, and I understand that. But if you're trying to tell one story, you have to resist the inkling of trying to get multiple people with a creative vision to work on separate parts of it. It's like one of those games where it goes around a circle and they add another word
like
to the story.
Corpse.
That's the one, exactly. Yes. That's I've talked enough. Go. What do you think?
So what's interesting is I feel like first we should actually talk about, like, if you even think about the original trilogy, those actually weren't all one person's vision, because they were all not directed by the same guy.
That's
George
true.
Lucas only directed the first one.
But didn't he write them? No, he didn't write them. You're right.
He didn't write them either. It was just story by.
Well, but if you have an overarching story by person, somebody who's sort of guiding it, rather than... and I don't know if they really had that.
So here's what I was going to say.
Sure,
right?
go ahead.
So, I think just keeping that in mind, I think it can be done. And I think in theory there was a story by guy, and I think the story by guy was supposed to be J.J. Abrams. I think J.J. Abrams was supposed to be that person who did the whole arc.
Yeah.
I think what ended up happening is the response to Last Jedi was so negative by fanboys.
Yeah.
That what they actually ended up doing was going back and retconning everything that Rian Johnson laid out.
Yeah.
And I don't think
I'm surprised they didn't blow up Canto Bight.
I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
To the point where I think this is less like them retconning what Rian Johnson did, because J.J. Abrams, I believe, was there for that whole process and allowed everything to happen. I believe they retconned all of their ideas, because everything about this movie screamed, let's give a 2.5-hour hand job to the fans so they don't Game of Thrones us and they don't get angry about what happened with the last movie. Down to, I thought Rose was a really interesting, compelling character in the second of the movie.
She cared about things that nobody else was caring about, and it brought an interesting point of view, I think.
And what they did with her in this movie was shameful. They just regulated her to the sidelines.
Yeah.
And I felt like they did that numerous times, where it was like, so Luke's ship was broken in the second movie.
Yeah.
And that's why he couldn't get out. He got there, broke it, and threw it in the water. And this movie was like, oh, it's magically fixed. There was all kinds of things like that, where they just sort of took everything that Rian Johnson did that was interesting and then just ripped it apart. And I will say this. I also felt like at times this was a movie where they were writing the script as they were going.
Oh, God. Seriously.
But they were shooting out of order anyways and still trying to get it all to piece together. Down to the point where, honestly, when the opening crawl came up on screen and it was like, Palpatine's back.
Yeah.
I looked to the person I saw the movie with and I went, did I miss something? This is how they're going to do that? They're just going to be like, he's back. How? We don't know. You fucking figure it out.
Don't worry. There is going to be 15 comics that you have to go out and buy to explain how we got here.
Right, but I think, though, what's weird about that is, they just were like, Palpatine's back. Great. How?
Who cares?
We'll let
Fuck
some
you.
idiot writing a comic figure out how that worked. And this movie felt full of those kinds of things where it was like, wait, why? What?
How did we get here?
Time out. Yeah. None of this makes sense.
I think instead of it being just a bunch of missions that one built on the other, I think there were so many more stories that they could have told within this if they had taken the time.
Well, I think what ended up happening was, it's interesting that you mentioned that they needed one person overseeing the whole vision. And I actually think what they needed to do was get out of the way, like, in so many words, tell the fans, like, fuck you, here's the story we're telling.
Right.
You could either like it or not like it.
Yeah.
But I feel like they were like, here's the story we're telling. And then they made the second movie, which I also think was a reaction to the fans. Because, like, if you remember the first movie, the fans were like, it's just like A New Hope.
Yep.
It's the same exact story.
It's too same. Now it's too different. Yeah.
Right. And I think each step of the way, they were listening to fans and trying to make fans happy. I mean, down to, like...
Spoilers.
Chewie getting that medal at the end. I was
God.
I laughed out loud in the theater, like, are you kidding me? This is what's happening right now? Like, this is the world we're living in?
It was a horse made by committee. It absolutely was, because the fan service was blatant and...
lazy.
Lazy, yes, absolutely. And the amount of times in this movie, we may just put spoilers, I may just say spoilers at the very beginning of this, but the fact that Chewie gets a medal at the end is a spoiler for a twist in the middle. But there were so many things that...
That twist in the middle was so dumb.
It was so dumb because you knew...
so badly plotted.
Exactly. But I think that if they had committed to a few things, if they had committed... There's a point where one of the characters sort of needs to sacrifice part of themselves to help them continue on their journey. And I thought that if something permanent had happened to this character, if something unrepairable had happened to this character, I wanted stakes. I know that these are children's movies, but it also, the second scene in the movie is Kylo Ren tearing through this army of faceless humanoid things. I don't know what they are, cutting their limbs off. So these are not strictly children's movies. So there can be stakes. There can be these things where it's not everybody comes back as Force ghosts. Everybody has their memories repopulated, whatever.
That was the thing that I loved about the second movie, is it felt like there were stakes. Like,
well, when Haldo goes through...
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Dude. I remember crying in the theater because what bravery, how cool was that shot, the soundscape.
Yes.
Like, all of that stuff added up in such a way where it was like, this is incredible. Where none of this felt like it had that. Like, if that moment happened in this movie, she would have come back and been like, I hit the ejector seat, don't worry.
Right.
And I floated back down to a planet called Earth, and they sent me here.
Yeah. So I don't know if you watched all of the teasers and the trailers and everything, but I think one of the very first teasers was Rey standing in the desert waiting for Kylo Ren's ship coming at her. And if you watch that alone, it sends shivers down me. Like, I thought
it's a great scene.
It's beautiful. Just that little bit when there's nothing outside of it, nothing influencing it, but the context in which it's in is messy. The suspense from it is completely gone because you know exactly how it's going to play out. Even the execution of it looks slow and uninteresting. You know, you don't care about the result of it because you know that everybody is bulletproof.
Yeah, absolutely. I also hate when movies do the thing of, like, so Rey's got the Force and, like, it's so strong she can pull a ship down.
She can do anything now.
Right, but later in the movie when they're all sinking in sand, she doesn't use the Force to get them out of the sand, which she could easily do.
Yep.
Because plot-wise, it's more in, like, they have to fall through.
Of course.
And then there's the moment where they're trying to get something off a ship over water, and I seriously thought, like, they were like, oh, we have to wait for the storm to subside. I thought there was actually going to be a joke where Rey was like, you guys, I've got the fucking Force.
I can walk on water, guys. I'm Jesus.
I can literally walk on water, or I can just be like, Asio prop, I'm not going to name it, and, like, it would just fly to her, because she knows exactly where it's at on the ship. She can think about it, and it would just come to her.
Yeah.
And rather than do that, they, like, so, like, the Force was she was only as strong as she needed to be
Yeah.
with the Force, like as plot points emerged.
Yes.
Which I hate when that happens. And the other thing too, the Force Ghost thing, I think you actually called out perfectly, because there's a moment where someone makes a return.
Yep.
And it's kind of shocking and kind of interesting. And I'm pretty sure, well, I think I'll just, spoilers.
Yes.
Han makes a return to talk to Kylo.
Yeah.
As a ghost or a memory.
I guess. You know what it felt like?
But,
and sorry to interrupt. It felt like Pa Kent in Batman vs. Superman. Do you remember when he goes hiking or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
And his dad is somehow in his memory.
There.
It just, it felt exactly like that turn.
Well, I hate to say what probably happened was that was supposed to be Carrie Fisher's scene, but she died.
Yep. Because she would have been a Force ghost.
Well, at that point, I don't think she was
she wouldn't have
Force Ghost at that point.
But she could have Force projected, whatever.
Force projected or something. But then the other thing like that killed me was like immediately after that scene, the very next scene is like Luke being a Force Ghost with Rey, and it was like, these scenes need to be separated, or you can have one, you can't have them both.
Yes.
Or if you're going to do it in an interesting way where we're
like a parallel. Yes.
Well, yeah, they're cutting back and forth at the same time. This is also fine. But what you can't do is have the one scene and then have us like surprised or excited by the second scene.
Yeah.
And then I do also want to say one thing too about the whole Carrie Fisher thing. Look, everyone knows Carrie Fisher died.
Yeah.
It's sad, it's horrible, it's tragic.
Yep.
What you did was you took old footage of Carrie Fisher from like the last movie, just like outtakes and whatnot.
Yep.
And tried to pigeonhole that into a script, so her performance was terrible, stilted, and weird.
Yes. The scenes were weird.
Well, and then everything was so exposition heavy in those scenes, because it'd be like, Carrie Fisher would be like, it's a droid. And Rey would be like, yes, a droid, which, you know, blah, 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 and like, do all this talking for Carrie Fisher, where I was like, this is really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
And it actually, for me, it took away from the movie, because now all of a sudden, all of these scenes at the beginning are stilted, weird. We know what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, like, they could have just written so much stuff for her off screen. Like,
well, they did,
Leia sent this message. This is what's happening.
It didn't really, like, yes, there is a point to her still existing in one way or another, but yeah, the rest of her performance is limited. And I understand that they have to set her up as being a presence to wrap her up.
But they could have done that with just looks.
I know.
Like, she could have looked at them.
Yeah.
She could have been watching from a distance. She could have just, you know what I mean? Like, there are ways they could have done that. Because right now what it is her dialogue now is out of place.
It really
doesn't feel like Leia.
No.
It actually, like, I hate to say it, it feels like, oh, that was an outtake. Because everything she says is so general. It's like, yes, today is a day.
You have to believe.
You have to believe.
Sure. And
it's like, but that's not who Leia, like Leia, who especially they set up in the last movie, is a strong, badass fucking general, man.
Yeah, she's not Yoda.
In this, she is not that, and it actually weakens. I think it weakens the movie in the long run.
Yeah, I agree, and again, the technical aspect of it, the trying to, somebody thought that they were a very clever writer to be given the clips that they had of her.
It was not clever,
and say. It just clunky and just a disappointing scene in general that didn't help either of the characters. And I don't think there were a lot of scenes with characters where they actually had a conversation. A lot of it was just like one person taking one side and then the other person saying, no, we can't do that. And then the downer is always turned around and or just gets pulled along. The writing in this movie takes a back seat to every other aspect of the movie. The special effects, the workarounds of actors being missed. It's like an afterthought.
Well, again, like just when we go back to Palpatine being back, nobody actually thought how that's going to work. So what they ended up doing was they were like, who cares? It's like, this goes back to the whole Carrie Fisher thing of like, they fucking put Palpatine back in there for no reason. Look, I literally just thought of this idea as we were talking. All they needed to do was have one moment where it was like, somehow Palpatine is tracking Leia through the Force, through the way she looks, so she has to be shrouded. And then you just have a stand-in with, a shroud over their face.
Yeah.
And that's a stupid idea. But it's no more stupid than having Palpatine back for no reason.
Well,
we as the audience will go, yeah, I get it. The actress playing her died. It's not like we will buy into this.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's what I'm saying is, like, we as the audience will buy into that. We will be forgiving.
Tell a better
story. We
story.
love Carrie Fisher.
Yes, exactly. We don't want to see her memory disrupted by this. I don't know. I do want to say the people who were upset about Rey, and this is spoilers for Last Jedi. The people who were pissed about how Rey was. No one was.
That was so stupid.
I mean, Rian Johnson did a lot of great things, but that felt like it was a bit of a push against fans. I mean, I get it. It was just very ham-handed, a little bit, like out of everything in that movie.
You mean from Rian Johnson's movie?
Rian Johnson's, yes.
Yeah, but I would argue that the whole point of Rian Johnson's movie and what makes it so beautiful and wonderful and amazing is it's like, who is going to be the one who defeats the bad?
Yes.
Is it going to be another king? Because at that point, that's what the Jedi and the Sith are. It's like,
absolutely,
it's kings fighting kings. Which is
what
I love about her being nobody, which is also what's so beautiful about, like, the end of that movie where the little kid, like, raises his fist in the air and he's so excited.
It can be him as well, yeah.
It could be anybody. It's like, that's what's
it's
so
almost
beautiful
like
about
Into the
Rian
Spider-Verse. Anybody can be Spider-Man.
Exactly. Well, it's also, too, like, when we look at... I mean, look, I hate to attach this kind of stuff to it, but, like, when we look at, like, politics today, and we look at, like, how governments are overthrown, when we look at, like, the French Revolution, it's always the people. It's always the nobodies that create change.
And that was kind of
not another king.
And this movie kind of had that story, but just for random pilots, instead of it being, everybody and our leader. Being nobody.
Our leader was a king.
Right. And so my point was that in the way that we didn't get history of Rey, we didn't get, even if it was nobody related to any of the characters in the show. Just like with Snoke, there is no history given, there is no complications, there is nothing that we can hold on to that is alluded to or told to us in any interesting way. And that is exactly the same thing that happens here with Palpatine, is that, you don't have to know anything about this. We're just thrusting you into the story. We're not going to address the fact that this is a 9-movie saga where people would sit through a 3-hour movie. They would watch the Emperor climbing out of that pit that he was thrown down by Darth Vader. We would watch his Force ghost being transferred into another one of his clones. Who knows? Anything to rather than saying, screw you, we're going to give you a paragraph in a crawl.
But I also think, too, this is what it's interesting, because, like, you were talking about Snoke not having a backstory and Rey not having a backstory. Both of those were retconned in this movie.
Oh, I know. Like,
Snoke could have had a backstory in this movie. But Snoke's backstory was just simply, he was a puppet of mine from Palpatine.
Great.
And, like, that was idiotic. And, like, also, too, like, Rey's backstory, again, I love the idea that she's a nobody, and then, like, what we find out... Because, like, I don't need her backstory in parts 1 or 2. I need her backstory in 3.
Right.
And if what she found out in 3 was just the fact that, like, she was special and she cared about things that no one else cared about.
Yeah.
And, like, that's the power to change. And, like, again, I hate bringing it to, like, politics today, but, like, she could have easily been a version of those kids from Parkland. Where, like, she could have easily been, like, an Emma Gonzalez. Where, like, her caring is what allowed her to change the world.
Yeah.
And is what made her special. Right? Like, that's the thing that... She was thrust into this place.
Yeah.
And then greatness came of it.
I would have watched that. Absolutely.
I would have loved that.
I even would have taken what if she found out that her parents did care about her and they still were nobody? Or just some sort of thing to flash back to, rather than having her wrapped up in the whole...
Well, she's a king.
Yes. Yeah.
She's a Palpatine. I mean, I do have to ask, did you ship the whole Scalpatine thing?
Scalpatine?
Yeah. Skywalker, Palpatine, kissing the Scalpatine. I portmanteaued that shit.
Yes, you did. Well, I might add. No. I thought it was very interesting, the connection that Rey and Kylo had. I thought I did from the beginning, and I did think that the Force Skype is fine with me.
I totally loved it.
I think it was a very interesting addition to the Force powers. I think that if you're connected in some way or another, that you can communicate in that way. Force projection is fascinating, and the ability to transfer, of course. I mean, I don't even care that there are no limits to Force powers. If you can transport across the universe, if you're powerful enough, great, fine.
Yeah.
You can resurrect yourself in space and fly back to the ship, fine. But the relationship in this was not built upon in the same way that the first two had sort of shown them, almost as not
it was retconned yet again.
It was retconned yet again. I actually never felt a romance, not a brother or sister connection either. I think I saw two young people struggling with a problem or a power. It was almost I don't know if this will even work out because I'm saying it as I'm thinking it, but almost as sort of like puberty and learning how to become an adult metaphor almost.
It's funny that you say that because I was actually fine with their kiss because I kind of wrote it off as it not being like exactly what I would call romantic as much as it is like two people going through a horrible situation and then at the end of it they're like, you know what, we should fuck.
Why not?
Like,
why not?
That's cool with me. Let's try that. What I disliked about... So two things. First of all, I hated in this one how all of a sudden with Force Skype, objects could be transferred because that was not a thing in the first one. Or the second one.
They were getting more powerful, duh.
Yeah, whatever. And then the second thing that I really, 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 really disliked about the Force Skype was when the movie is all said and done, what I was hoping for was that there would be a valid reason they could Force Skype. And at the end of the movie, there wasn't. No. There was no connection. It was like...
It was just two people that had met each other.
Yeah, and I wish that there could have been a stronger, like, somehow they were linked.
Yeah.
Like
their great-great-grandparents were related.
Even if it was like, it was foretold by, Baby Yoda that...
where was he?
Yeah, exactly.
Spoilers, he's not in it.
Even if it was like, quote-unquote, foretold by Baby Yoda that... I mean, I'm making up the Baby Yoda part, but like foretold by somebody that like there were two people who will either go bad together or go good together.
Yeah.
Period. The end.
Yin yang. Yeah.
And not that one is bad and one is good, but somehow they are linked.
Yes.
And the world depends on their linkage. I would have been so happy with that. Like, I would have been totally cool with that. And, like, that to me feels like, oh, there's the reason they're linked, is because somehow cosmically they're linked. They didn't even do that. It was just like, oh, you know what? This was a character in the other movies, and this was a character in the other movies, and you're related to those characters, so you two are linked now.
It's generational, man.
But the linkage is based off of the fact that episodes 4, 5, and 6 exist.
Yeah.
Their linkage is not based off the fact that it makes sense for this world.
Right. I mean, Palpatine and Anakin didn't go all the way back to... I mean, they weren't both born from midichlorians or whatever the fuck.
Right.
Speaking of midichlorians, by the way, I think I agree with you. I would have loved to see a connection, and I think that... applause to them for getting away from the scientific reason of being force sensitive. That's great. I do not want to know the biological reason that these people can do this. But I do think that being sort of a mystical situation, I think if they had split the difference... of it being like completely unknown and just a thing that you have to believe in and a force of will technically, and it also being biological with the midichlorians, I think they could have found a middle ground in a way. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, that we could have found...
Just a reason.
Just a reason, exactly, yeah. I mean, they did a lot of prophecy shit in the prequels as well, and, I'm not requesting that, but... And again, I'm not smart enough to figure this shit out, but it would have been nice to have something or other that linked them, like you said.
But the problem is the idea of like the thing that you said about not being smart enough to figure this out. You don't have to be that smart. All you have to do is just not listen to the fans who are angry and demand X,
Invent
Y,
a
or Z.
reason. Invent a reason. Make it up yourself. rather than living within such confines.
Well, and I don't mean like we as fans should invent a reason.
Right.
The person who should invent a reason is the guy who wrote the thing.
Who's telling the story.
But again, I feel like this whole movie was so reactionary to Episode 8 that they didn't know what they were going to do. They sort of just retconned everything and were like, go with it.
Yep.
Bye. At the end of the day, the problem with this entire movie was they were listening to fan reactions from Episode 8.
Right.
And then they went ahead and made the weakest version of this movie because they were afraid of what to do. And I know I've mentioned that part like 4 times, but like it's really a bummer because everything that could have been cool was just sort of destroyed based off of whims.
Right. And one of the biggest problems with this is, I would say, the pressure. It is massively difficult to wrap up this thing that has been going on for 40 plus years. It's so hard to tell a story. Again, I'm saying that you're right, because do you fan service, or are you going to satisfy people with the story you tell? No, you're not, ever. No, never. I know.
I mean, Episode 7 and 8 are a perfect example.
Yeah.
Episode 7 was too much like the originals. Episode 8 wasn't like the originals enough. It doesn't matter what you do.
No.
People's nostalgia for these movies are so huge that they actually can't realistically step away and look at them as films. To the point where I used to have this whole thing before the new movies came out where I would say to people who were like huge Star Wars fans, I'd be like, oh, you love Star Wars? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'd be like, okay. So there's 6 movies, right? And they'd be like, yeah. And I was like, do you like the prequels? And they'd be like, no. I was like, oh, okay. So 3 movies, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Do you like the Ewok movie? And they'd be like, no, the Ewok movie's not that great. Oh, okay. So 2? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, so was A New Hope really good, or did you kind of find it boring? And they'd be like, well, I mean, when you really think about it, it just starts the story. It's sort of boring. I was like, okay. So out of 6 movies, you like 1.5? And there was always this like real like reaction of like, fuck you, don't ruin my childhood. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm not trying to ruin your childhood. I'm just trying to look at these movies objectively.
Yeah.
And people don't do that. People will not do that. But I don't know. It does sound like I hated the movie. And I didn't really hate it. It was just a mess. And at the end of the day, it was fine.
You know what it felt like? Well, first of all, it just felt like another chapter, rather than being something grand and resolute.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You know, and also, it felt like each movie, and, you know, I know that all of the movies start in media res. They start, that's the bonus of the crawl.
Yeah.
That we do get thrust into something without having to know all the backstory, and that works to varying degrees in the other movies. But these 3 movies felt like, funny enough, 1.5 movies. It felt like they were slow walking a story. There was 1.5 movies of story, and they spread that across 3.
Interesting, because I was totally fine with the first 2 movies.
Okay.
I thought this last one was an eighth of a movie.
Well, that's definitely close to the truth. Yeah, the first 2 movies told their story, but I think all 3 of the movies have been in shadow, obviously the first 3, and
in shadow of the prequels as well.
Well,
weirdly,
almost in a rebellion to the prequels.
Well, but that's
obviously,
but every choice made in these movies is affected by how much people love the first 3, how much people hated the second 3.
Well, I don't understand why they didn't bring back Jar Jar, honestly.
Yeah. Well,
you know, I mean, just to tie it all together. Tie it all.
At that point, Jar Jar would have been 95.
You know what? Honestly, I have heard this idea, and I think it's kind of interesting. Do you remember in Force Awakens, Max von Sydow being the informant?
Yeah.
If that had been Jar Jar, you don't even have to correct his diction or anything like that. He's just an older, wiser Jar Jar.
Yeah.
And it almost is a bit of a redemption because he dies.
Totally.
You know, and I think that would have been a very interesting sacrifice for him to make. And to tie it all together, I don't know, it just would have been a fascinating
Can I mention
idea.
one thing about this movie that cracked me up? And then, well, because we are at normal episode length at this point.
It seems like it.
But there was a moment in this movie where I laughed out loud in the theater so loud that people looked at me and I got shushed. And it was when Donald Gleason was like, "Give me the gun, I want to shoot them myself." And he shoots the stormtroopers, and they look at him and he goes, "I was the spy." And I was like, if you couldn't figure out he was the why do you need dialogue to explain the fact that he was we should know.
Yeah.
Also, too,
do you get it?
That's another thing of cool, there's a spy, great. Why? We'll never know.
He doesn't like Kylo Ren anymore.
But I mean, that's the thing, though, is it's
so simple.
I wish they would have. But that's not even because he doesn't want to see them win. At the end of the day, it seems like he still wants to see Palpatine win. He just doesn't want to see Kylo win. But then shoot Kylo, because at that moment, the movie yet again, the movie, it's one of those things where it's like, fuck, we need a spy to make this work. How do we do that? We'll just make it him. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to introduce somebody else.
Well, speaking of introducing somebody else, when fucking Dominic Moynihan showed up,
what the hell?
I was like, wait, what?
Oh, it's not Penny's boat.
Why is Charlie there? And then he does nothing in the movie except look super concerned.
There's so many characters in this that they introduce for this one movie, and they make no impact whatsoever. Like Poe's old girlfriend, Carrie Russell, who never shows her face.
Oh, that was Carrie Russell?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
In the fake Mandalorian armor or whatever.
I didn't realize that.
Yep. And what was Bubba Frick? Booba Frick?
Yeah. Which I actually kind of liked him.
He was fine. He was a fun little characterlet, you know?
But then, speaking of other characters they introduced, General Pride, played by Richard Grant.
Yeah.
Who just shows up out of nowhere,
why is there somebody above? Where did he come from?
Well, that's the thing, is it's make him the spy.
Yeah. You just introduced him. Why not?
Cool. Done.
I don't know. Have we dissected this enough? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. We've lost all of our listeners who fucking love Star Wars.
Listen, again, this is not a hate letter to this movie. It's a disappointment letter. Well, we're not mad, we're disappointed.
And I'm going to say this too. So, I have this thing about Rotten Tomato scores where obviously movies that are in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are great, those are fun, I love them, whatever. Or I'll say I usually agree. Sometimes I don't, but usually you can see why people like it.
Sure.
And then there's the movies that are in the 10s and the 20s that I find deliciously amazing.
Hilarious, yeah.
Cats is in that place, and again, I want to see that so bad.
Yeah.
The movies I find that I get most frustrated with, that I hate the most, is anything from 40 to 60%. Because what happens in those movies is they are usually boring, and they usually just play it safe. I would have rathered this movie them swing for the fences and fail miserably.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day being you know what, though? I fucking admire the fact that they tried. Rather than walking out and being oh, okay, well, that was a warm flat Coke.
Yeah. Wait, you don't like warm flat Coke? That's how I drink it all the time.
I actually know somebody who microwaves their Coke to make it warm and flat as a pick me up, and I'm
my God.
Ugh.
It's just like coffee.
When I was in Greece this last year, they have a coffee flavored Coke that is incredible.
In Germany, in the clubs, they had Joe Water, which was caffeinated water.
Fuck yeah, I want that.
Oh yeah. Keep you hydrated and spinning the entire night.
Yeah. But anyway, so I guess that's it.
Warm flat Coke of a movie.
Warm flat Coke of a movie. Which, if I was thirsty, I would drink warm flat Coke.
Oh, sure.
It's not like it's hot Coke.
Right.
It's just warm and flat.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
It is what it is. Well.
All right. Well, thanks for...
That's all. And if you didn't understand that...
You were doing a Wookiee. I was actually gargling.
Oh. Well, now spit.
Yeah.
Finish it up. All right, everybody. Well, that was another glowing cannon blast.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, half of them are good, half of them are bad. You know, you'll never know until you tune in.
Hey, you want to do a cannon blast on cats?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's
oh
do
my
it.
God, yes. That
I'm committed to this.
Oh my God. It's gonna be great. I'm sure of it.
Now you have to go see Cats.
Oh, God damn it. All right. I'm on my way. The Christmas Day. It is.
Christmas Day. All right, man.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Yes, indeed. And
I feel like we're signing up because we're talking from a distance.
It's funny, but
we should actually do the rest of the podcast the way it normally goes.
I suppose we should.
Yeah.
All right. So, as we always say at the end of these episodes, good night and good cannon blast.
Burns.
Oh dear. But what was my point? Let's just go from 5. Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. 10 felt a little much.
It was a lot.
2,
1.
1.
Perfect.
Yeah. Do you think that'll get picked up on the mic?
Maybe.